I'm going to. Otto Lee is the County Supervisor of Santa Clara County, California for District 3. Otto is an immigrant from Hong Kong, and his family moved to California when he was a young child. His later years, he was elected council member, vice mayor, and mayor of Sunnyvale, California. He is a Navy veteran of 28 years and retired as commander. Otto founded his own law firm, Intellectual Property Law Group. He's worked with Silicon Valley the last 30 years as an intellectual property lawyer. Otto is a DNC member and vice chair of the Veterans Caucus. Otto, welcome to La Lucha Continúa, and over to you.
Muchas gracias, Ani. Thank you so much. Very nice to see everybody's face, and some of you on the, even though you cannot show your face, but that's okay. Yes, this is Otto Lee. I was born in Hong Kong, my bio say, and been living in the U.S. Since I was 15 years old. So I've been there. I've been in the U.S. Gosh, close to 40 some years, 40 odd years now. Got three daughters, three teenage daughters. Bless me. So yes, you see all those white hair. That's what they come from. 13, 16, and 19-year-olds. They're completely same genetically, two same parents, but the character is totally different. And we can figure out why, but that's how it works, right? Uh, Good thing is one thing in my household, we don't raise Republicans or the food would stop. So they're good Democrats. They knock on doors, help me win my campaigns, and now we're gonna plan on knocking on doors. Actually, they've got some good door knocking experience. They've been knocking in Nevada because of the fact that they're so close to California, and California votes, we know, usually is not a big deal in the presidential year, but it's very important. Now, next door, which is a much smaller state, and every vote really matters more in that sense. So that's why we usually go out there and spend a couple of weekends every 4 years. So we'll likely do that in Reno again this year. So that's what we've been doing for our party in many ways. I do serve on the DNC. I'm one of those 400 special folks get to be called unpledged delegates. We run locally within our own states, and I believe Democrats for Abroad also have a few DNC members get to represent at the DNC level. And the important work, of course, is local because as everybody understands, every vote matters. I just want to share a quick story about how every vote matters. In the congressional district, I live in California, next to our district, California District 16. We just had a primary election where two people got literally exactly the same number of votes on the first count, 35,601 votes after 3 weeks of counting. Because of that, um, interesting enough, neither one of those candidates won a recount. They would have both gone to general. They would be both happy with it. Turns out the other candidate did not want to run against them and pay for or paid for the recount. And of course, when you do a recount with 35,000 votes, there will be a difference. And so one of the candidates actually get five more votes at the second count and made it to the general election. And the one who did not make it, who's short by 5 votes, actually get to sit next to me every 2 weeks on the Board of Supervisors. He's my colleague on the Board of Supervisors, who is a very brilliant man who's been this county supervisor, state assembly member, state senate, being Congress is his lifelong dream. Everybody thought he was a front runner, but he didn't make it a general. So when I say every vote counts, every vote really counts. And there are just so many of these stories I could share, but this is just the most recent one, just happened a month ago, month and a half ago. And one thing I do learn, being somebody still live in U.S., but have lots of connections abroad. We have over 5 million United States citizens living outside the U.S., but only about a million voted, right? So we've got a lot of U.S. citizens not voting, and that's really a, what a sad waste of votes, right? Because as you know how important each vote matters, especially many of the small states like Nevada, and of course the swing states like Pennsylvania, now Michigan, and Arizona, Georgia. A lot of these states are every vote really matters so much more, and those are the states going to determine the U.S. presidency. As we understand, I mean, popular votes wise, we know Democrats always wins, Ask Al Gore, right? He got more votes. He wasn't the US president. And same as Hillary, right? In 2016, Hillary sure had more votes, popular votes. So sometimes I tell people, stop looking at the popular votes, right? It really is not that useful other than being a trend, trying to see where things are going. At the end of the day, of course, it's the swing state, and that's what truly matters at the end of the day. So, but I also tell people, stop just focusing on, oh, we're ahead, right? We've all been there in 2016. Oh, Hillary's got this, right? I mean, how many of us thought that, right? And that evening, or you woke up the next morning, and are like, OMG, what WTF happened, right? I mean, we all in awe, right? My daughters were crying. My second daughter is named Hillary, named after you know who. We were bawling, right? Back in 2016. And I would say to people, it's like, look, matter what really matters at the end of the day is not the polls, right? It's about GOTV and about turnout, right? If we people do not show up to vote, that's how we lose election, right? I mean, look at Brexit. I mean, that was a great way of saying like a canary in the coal mine. There was like, oh my gosh, that could happen, right? So, and that's happened, of course, the same year as 2016 as well. And the thing I just want to really remind people is, especially if you live abroad, the mechanism to vote is so much more difficult. So I give my hat to all of you to take the trouble to, request those absentee ballots, to go through all the hoops that you to jump into, because every freaking state is different, right? And counties and how you get the votes in, the number of stamps you need. Some you don't need stamps, and then it has to arrive by a certain date. If not, it won't be counted. So first, my hats off to you for that. But two is we really need folks like you all to tell your family members, your neighbors, friends you know who are US citizens, to also take that trouble now. Don't wait till like September, October. So, oh, gee, maybe I should vote. Well, maybe by then it's too late, right? To get that stuff, that procedure ready and started. So that's one of the things I always want to ask folks to get that going. Um, and it's everybody who has watched that debate or heard about debate are nervous, right? Everybody is worried. The press is talking about, oh, maybe we could replace somebody else to run. There might be another candidate that could be younger, that could beat Trump and would speak better and blah blah blah, right? But at the end of the day, the reality is that there really is no mechanism built in for that to happen. Number one. And number two is what I really find ironic in some ways to some people, but really is interesting is the polls I really stare at more of anything else are the battleground states, right? That's what matters. And what's somewhat ironic is that now that we're almost 2 weeks from the debate, Biden's number actually is tightening up and doing not worse, but better in many of these battleground states, which doesn't seem intuitive. But I can tell you why it's intuitive is that besides Biden, what Trump said, what Trump argued, I have never had a sexual relations with a porn star. Who would believe that? I mean, I say maybe that statement could be true because the statement says A. Probably multiple is what you had. But the point is, uh, it's horrifying that people. It really reminded people, oh my God, that guy could be our president again. I think that probably is the fear that drive people to say, oh my God, now we really need to vote for Biden. I think that's probably why some of the polls tightened. But at the end of the day, I just want to say that the I mean the work that's had happened last 4 years was truly phenomenal in terms of legislation that matters for the infrastructure, for the environment, to veterans, all these really major legislation that has been passed, and at the same time, it's not just Biden himself; it's really his team of folks that's working together to bring out these results. So. I just want to say that a lot of times when people keep focusing on his age, whether he has Parkinson's or does he have this disease or is he too old and all that. I think it's so important to remind people that at the end of the day, it is what he does that truly matters. And for those who remember the speech that Biden made the very next morning after the debate, he's like a different person, right? He has all the energy and passion and strength, and people's like, hey, we want that Biden back. We don't want the other one, the debate night. But but I think if anything, there's the term I was just sharing earlier, talking to uh, Annie and Catherine preparing for this talk today, is a term called gish galloping.
Yes.
If you have never heard of that term before, look it up on Wikipedia, the definition. After you read 3 sentences of like, that's exactly what Trump did at the debate. Throw a lot of stuff on the wall. There's truth, there's half truth, there's lies, there's garbage. Just put it all there. And basically you overwhelm the opponent, right? That which one do I respond to? Right? There's so much stuff, right? So basically it's not really so much a debate, you just talk over the other guy. So I think that's exactly what just happened. So I think it's important to understand what happened. And I think we, if anything, we certainly learned from it. But at the same time, I felt actually quite good, surprisingly, is that you see the donations coming in. People now are getting serious, getting nervous. And one thing I mentioned earlier that we had in 2016, the complacency that Hillary's going to win, nobody said that now about Biden. That complacency is not there. And I would say the best thing we could do is let's gift that complacency to the Republicans. Let make them think that Trump's gonna win. So maybe they don't have to work so hard or show up to vote or whatever and drink that stupid Kool-Aid. Which a lot of them are drinking the Kool-Aid, right? And so I just want to share some of those things that I'm thinking. I'm happy to talk to everybody about this. One of the major message that Biden did mention at the debate, and something that I have been talking to folks as a 28-year Navy veteran that served in Iraq, a year boots on the ground, with a mortar landed 90 feet from me. When you have somebody who calls our fallen heroes
Oh,
losers and suckers, uh, that statement in itself is just qualifying to be even a dog catcher. Forget the president of the United States. We respect our heroes who sacrifice their life, give up everything to defend our freedom. And this almost sounds like the speak of the other side, but that's exactly what it is about our veterans. And as a vice chair on the veterans and military families, I want to make sure this message is definitely given to not just Democrats abroad, but so many of our service members that serves throughout the world right now as we speak, to understand how important this is. If somebody who actually thinks like that disrespect our veterans, our service members, I can't imagine people who understand that would ever vote for Trump ever again. They will try to belittle it. They say, I didn't say it. They'll say all that. But this actually come from General Kelly. Not only he was his as general, but he was his chief of staff. And you know what chief of staff is? The chief of staff is a person that spends practically every day, right, if not every hour, with the president. On the board of supervisor, I have my own chief of staff, and trust me, I speak more to my chief of staff than I speak to my wife and my daughters combined. Okay, that's what a chief of staff does, and they are really good at what they do. And when the chief of staff tells you that, that tells you a lot of what this person truly is. Anyway, so I just want to bring that up. In looking at some of the also interesting election results in Europe, right, and how that what kind of takeaway we have. UK Labour has the highest turnover in 14, 15-year history, right? Labour didn't expect to do that darn well, right? The turnover. And they have a new Starmer as a new prime minister. France had a bit of a heart attack, right? The primary election, the far right did far better, Le Pen's campaign, but then suddenly during the general campaign, which by the way, our general is many more months later. Their general is like within a week, bam, the second election, right? And it's amazing that they can coalesce. The other folks decide not to split the vote, work together, right, to make sure that the far right candidate did not win. And I think that's the type of lessons we ourselves should learn is that we need to coalesce to make sure all the independents, the Green Party, are all coming together. We don't need another Jill Stein. Sorry, I like Joe, but not for president because Robert F. Kennedy, all these people take votes away from the true number because basically they both don't matter, right? And I think this is our job on this call, who are good Democrats abroad, to really explain to people how that works. Because and also if your votes is in California, probably don't make that much of a difference, right? We all understand how that works, but when you're in the swing states, every single of those one vote would really, really be determining its president. So just making that point very clear. There was a program I thought was very interesting in California. Somebody came up with this, I don't know, 4, 8 years ago that says, let's trade votes. If you want to vote for Joe Stein to make a statement, right, or the libertarian, why don't I trade the vote for you? I'll vote for the libertarian or the Green vote Party person in California, so it won't change the outcome. And then you go ahead and vote for Biden. So we switch the vote that way. Somebody says, could that be legal? I said, well, if people agree to do whatever they want, they can do whatever they want, just among those two people. But that way, at least the big picture doesn't get affected, right? Because ultimately, if you don't want Trump to be elected, right? Well, if you don't want Trump to be elected, let's make sure the vote goes to Biden because you don't really have any other choice, right? In that sense. Um, and the other issue that we also see a lot is the anti-immigration rhetoric. And that's actually not just the United States, right? You see it in Europe as well, whether it's Le Pen's, party in France or Europe and or UK and whatnot. And of course, the US, so much of Biden's number one Achilles heels a lot of people is the immigration issue. And it's fascinating because I am an immigrant, right, from Hong Kong. And when you read, if you ever visited, right, taking the ferry to the island to see the Statue of Liberty, you go look at the little pedestal where he stood on, you read what it says, right? Give me your tithe, your poor, the wretched, right? And it is a welcoming because of the fact that the United States fundamentally is a country of immigrants, right? We really are. I mean, no other country could say that, but we really are. And so for us to go all the way as anti-immigrant, some of the folks who are in the anti-immigrant camp I'm reading, they say, oh, don't call us far right. We're just anti-immigrant. Well, you know what? Anti-immigrant is the far right. Steve Miller would not want you to believe that, but that's what you really are. So let's call a spade a spade. And I think we need to make that point very clear because our country could not be who we are, what we are, if we don't have the great work of our many of our immigrants that bring in all the cultures, the knowledge, and hard work, right, to build this country. And being from Silicon Valley per se, right, we have not the Fortune 500, we're the Fortune 15 companies, right? Nvidia now is like crazy, like close to 3 trillion on the market cap. Of course, we have Apple, we have Google, we have Meta, which is Facebook. These are huge companies, plus Intel and Broadcom and all those right here in our Silicon Valley, plus so many more. And so many of these companies are either headed by immigrant or founded by immigrant, and so many workers are immigrants. So I think it is so important to remind people, some of the biggest, best, or brightest, smartest people in our country are immigrants, and I think um, it's important to remind people how important immigration is for the success and how well we're doing. So um, that's one area I want to also mention as well. And the last area I want to mention is about the issue of violence. The Republican always try to pretend to be the country that is law and order, about supporting our military, and what they do is they support the defense contractor. They buy the most expensive toys. Democrats are the ones that are truly supporting the people, the service member, the military families. We're the ones who passed the PACT Act to making sure that our veterans get the benefits. We are the ones fighting for funding for VA every year while they're trying to cut it or privatize it. So I just want to make sure people realize, and of course, when they talk about law and order, oh, these rotten, cities is all Democrats' fault. Well, look what happened on January 6th. Who's out there bringing zip ties to try to assault and kidnap members of Congress, fighting the police, defending our U.S. Capitol, our biggest symbol, right? Those are the crazies, patriots. They call themselves patriots, but they are not real patriots, right? No, patriots don't do that. And so I think it's just so important to make sure that, if we cannot win this election with the Supreme Court decision that was handed down, how we have this so-called absolute immunity for a president of the United States on quote unquote official business. So what exactly is official business, right? How do you define that? It would be a very dangerous place this time around if Trump ever becomes president. So I just wanted to remind these things to people how important it really is. Um, that this we always say, oh, this election is the most important election in our life. Well, dang, it sounds like a broken record, but it truly is because the consequences cannot be more dire. And this time around, it's not like 4 years ago. He really didn't know what he was doing at the time. He got in, he got at least a few decent people to be in the cabinet, right? But this time around, he with his handpicked, yes people, and certainly that would be, hate to say it, yeah. I mean, I would say the ending of our democracy is not an overstatement. And I've given you so many good news. I can see everybody's just laughing and happy. I'm gonna turn into Q&As.
Should we go to questions? Kathy has the first question. Thank you.
Assuming I can find my unmute button. There we go. Well, thank you, Otto. I thought that was really, really insightful and helpful to crystallize some of those issues. I have a question that actually comes out of the experience of a recent DA Spain trip to the naval base in Rota, Spain, near
Rota,
Cadiz.
nice. Yes.
And we had the good pleasure of working with the voting assistance officer there. She was wonderful. Shout out to Andrew for having organized all that. We had a couple of members from Malaga who joined us there. But we are invited back for an event in September to register voters again. So that was a really, really terrific opportunity.
When in September are you going back, Catherine?
We don't know. The dates have not yet been sent, but the chief was very enthusiastic about our coming back, and at least the two from Malaga will be able to come back and volunteer at that point, and can take a couple of other helpers with them. I can keep you in the loop on that if you'd like
Great.
to know.
Yeah, please do. Absolutely.
Yeah. My question, though, is it's actually the intersection of the military and the immigrants. I was stunned by the number of people who came in to register who are American citizens and are members of the military. Like, for example, the voting assistance officer is originally from Trinidad and Tobago and moved to New York when she was a teenager. So what's up with that? And is there a special I mean, the voter registration, of course, is nonpartisan, but is there a special message in the military for immigrants?
Oh, absolutely. If anything, I would say the immigrants who actually did not get an earth-born citizenship, who actually has to work hard, go through the INS and all those complicated forms, take the exam and pay the fees to become naturalized, definitely appreciate what that meant to be a United States citizen and the right to vote being such a sacred right, right? And I'm not really saying it just for this group, but it really is a sacred right, because when we say, folks, many millions of people fought and many have died for us to have the right to vote, right? And that's something that I even hear many Republicans saying. In many ways, understanding the concept of how important this voting right is and how that has really been earned by those who have sacrificed through war and through battles to give us this freedom. So I think it is important to connect us. So I think that's why a lot more the immigrants kind of appreciate that right, knowing what they wouldn't have had back in the home, wherever home country was, versus what we have here. Because after all, people forget, the United States is actually the oldest democracy, constitutional democracy in the world. India is not the largest based on size of population, but the United States is the oldest of all that, even though we are not that old of a nation. We're still fairly new compared to many of the European or Asian countries. So in that sense, I think it's important to remind people that, and with so many of the members of the military, and that's why I think it's so important to tell the story about the losers and suckers, because of the fact that this is truly I would say this, it is absolutely unanimity that every service member respects somebody who got injured, who died in a war, or as a POW. For example, like John McCain, right? I didn't vote for him. I vote for Obama, of course. But I have tremendous respect for John McCain, right? In so many ways for what he's done. Able to serve 5 years as a POW. He was offered actually after a year or so when they found out that he was the son of a U.S. admiral. The Viet Cong said, "Hey, you could go," and he goes, "Oh, I'll go, but I need all my, compatriots, all my other cellmates to come with me. If they're not coming, I'm not leaving. And he stayed to the Hanoi Hilton 2 years longer. Now that's the heroism that we don't hear about, right? I mean, Trump would have a bone spur and get out of it. We all know that. But it's I think it's so important to pay that respect and remind people what service really means. And to be commander in chief, you have to. And here's Trump, who had the opportunity. I would love to go to Normandy. I've never visited Normandy. That's one of his lifetime bucket list. I want to go visit. That Trump had a chance to go and he decided not to go. He blamed it was raining or whatever it was, right? I mean, that says a lot about who you are and what you are. And those are stories I always want to make sure I tell our veterans about it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question since nobody else has raised their hand. Oh, Suzette, sorry, can I jump in front real quick?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay, this is on behalf of one of our other members who couldn't be here today. And she has concerns about young voters. She works with college students and she says that these kids who are 18 to 20 years old don't really even remember the US before the 45th president. You know, they've become used to the kind of ugly politics and lying, and they think that's normal now because it's the only thing that they know. And
Yes,
many of them have never even heard of like the Access Hollywood tapes that happened when they were so young, they didn't hear
right.
about it.
Exactly.
So as a father of young children or younger voters, maybe you can give us some insight into how to talk to this younger people about the dangers of Trump, because I don't think they really perceive it the same way we older generations
Right.
do.
Annie, that's a great question. And actually, there's some memes I saw the other day that was going around. That was really good. Was the debate that happens between, it was Mitt Romney versus then President Obama running for re-election 2012 during one of the debates, when one greets the other, says, "I know today's your anniversary. I'm so sorry that, I'm sure this is not the place you want to be to celebrate anniversary." That's how cordial the two candidates were with each other at the debate. Both gentlemanly, both honorable, right? And those days were just so long ago. It feels like ancient history, right? But I think it's important to be able to show people that that's how it used to be, and that's the way it should be. And a lot of that happens really started in 2016, right? We've never had somebody that wants to lock up your political opponent ever. And then the benign saying, "Oh, I didn't say lock her up. It was the people who chanted. It wasn't me." And of course, Colbert will find at least 3 videos that he said it himself, right? Stuff like that, you just can make up. Videos are really great because you could lie all you want, but there it is. This is what happened before. So I thought that was phenomenal. But I think it's important to use these. And with this generation now, honestly, because how young they are, so used to the YouTube videos, so used to all the various memes and whatnot, that's the type of information that we need to provide them. Like the Access Hollywood tape, there's lots of video about it. And for kids who haven't heard it, hear what was said. And I just also want to say something about the Trump, not so much give him credit, but really understood how wicked but smart that was, is when the Access Hollywood tape come through. So many Republicans were calling Trump, "Oh, drop out, you're done. There's no way you can get elected. Forget it. Bye." Remember that?
Yeah.
Right? That happened. He didn't drop out. He doubled down. And what he did, it was in a way back to like wicked but brilliant. He went to call every woman that has accused Bill Clinton for rape or assault or whatnot, line them in the room, get the press in there, and bam, and turn it into an equal. "Oh yeah, you say I did these bad things? Well, how about your husband did all these bad things to these women?" Just equalize everything. Like now he's doing, right? Oh, I'm guilty felony. Well, Hunter Biden's felony guilty too, right? Just get everything equal. Well, checking a box of buying a gun versus paying porn stars and hiding the lawyers, I think there's a big difference between those two. But you know how he tried to equate everything? That's his what's called modus operandi. That's how he does it. And it worked for a lot of people. So yeah.
It's been the work of the Congress this past year and a half, basically trying to find a reason to indict Joe Biden.
Yeah.
those stupid
Yeah,
investigations they've been doing.
you equate everything. Yep. Everything Hunter did must be Joe.
Suzette, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Maybe I should explain. I'm listening in from Toulouse, France, and I'm a member of Democrats Abroad in Toulouse.
Bonjour.
Yes.
Interesting election you had.
Yes, very interesting. So I would like to go back and to ask you about a remark you made about there's no mechanism built in for changing, in fact, our candidates. Because in fact, our executive committee is having long, monthly, detailed discussions about what can we do, and people really wanting to drop Biden and not keep us back. And that has not been my position at all, because for many, many reasons. I think he's our man, but certainly in war, you don't change your horse as you're going into battle.
Exactly.
But people have been talking about the fact that there are mechanisms that can be used. So when you said there is no mechanism, is that really the case? Because people here are saying, well, we can go to the convention and we can put up another candidate, and we need to do this and we need to push hard. Is that a possibility?
So yes, the only possibility for that to happen is when you have the person who has already gotten all the delegates vote. I mean, because Joe Biden has already received far more than the necessary pledged delegates to win the nomination at the convention. So that's a fact. Okay, that's just that's a fact. In order for that to change, is that the individual who has those votes would have to, quote, release the delegates. Because if you have pledged delegates, you're not going to a convention to vote for anybody you want. You are pledged, which means your first vote has to be Joe Biden.
Okay.
And so that's already there. So that's what I mean by the mechanisms aren't there. Now, I am fortunate enough to be a DNC member. I am actually one of the what we call the non-pledged delegates. I could vote for anybody I want, because I don't go through that mechanism being a DNC member. There are a few of us who have that unpledged votes. But the thing is, even if all the unpledged votes goes to another candidate, they're still far below the necessary vote needed to be nominated as the individual to be nominated. Does that make sense?
Yes. I've understood. In fact, even if there is that one mechanism, there's no probability of it happening unless all of a sudden.
Unless Biden himself steps aside. Until that happens, this ain't happening. Now, if he steps aside, that does not automatically mean that the VP candidate would become the candidate. Doesn't work that way either. That's a separate. Then's a complete wild west situation. Yeah.
So you vote on the second ballot, not the first ballot.
Yeah, because of the new rules that's been provided after the Clinton and Bernie Sanders rule, the first ballot we are supposed to vote for this candidate best nominee. In this case, would be Biden. But after the first ballot, we don't have a nominee after the first ballot. Then I can vote for a second. But in this case, with so many pledged delegates all going to Biden, there's no other alternatives at this point.
Right.
So that segues nicely into Lisa Berger's question.
Right. I can ask it, or I just wrote it into the chat, but yeah, I was just wondering if you could describe what you actually do, what one does when you're a DNC member at the Democratic Convention. If you could, we had election, we sat all day voting for people to be delegates. We'd like to know what it is you do there to maybe encourage people to run in the future.
Good.
Thanks.
It's truly a honor, and it's exciting place to be at the convention, because oftentimes when we go to convention, we knew who's the nominee, right? By the time the convention comes. So I've asked that question, like, why do people go to convention? What does it matter? You already know who's going to be the president, vice president, like in 2016 or whatever. right? 2020. Why do you bother to go? What's the big deal there? Well, first of all, it's a lot of times in life is about relationship and connections. At a convention, you run into everybody. Congress members, senators, presidential candidates, former presidential candidates, cabinet secretaries, a dime a dozen, right? The press is everywhere. There's so many presses want to get quotes from you, and so it's truly exciting to see how these things are being planned. I mean, it is in many ways not a big party, but 4 different nights of events. And previously, the way they try to do conventions is that the first night and 2 nights are try to kind of get the folks together. The third night is when they nominate the VP, and then the fourth night the president, and then the president, vice president will make that big speech on the last night, and everybody goes away and go ready to campaign. So that's how convention traditionally has worked. This year is different because of Ohio. Ohio says, "Oh, your darn convention's so late. If you don't have a nominee by this date, that person doesn't even get on our ballot." So the Democrats are, "Oh shoot, that's not good, right?" So we're actually going to have a vote by the delegates before the convention by mail and by electronic and whatnot. But there'll be a modern way of voting. So by the time this convention goes, we really already have a nominated and qualified candidate already. So then it's like, what do you need a convention for? Convention is also the time when folks do a lot of fundraising. This is where a lot of the folks, like for example, I have to say there's this thing called the finance committee. Those who have donated a lot of money to the party also demands or expects a lot. So they are the ones who have some fancy parties. They have some, they have more access. When people pay money, donate in our country, you are not buying the vote, even though it's what people think. What they're buying or what they're getting is access, right? They're getting access. That photo with Kamala, the photo with the Biden, the photo with the senator and whatnot, right? Those are the type of events that also raise a lot of money for the party. And also, it really is important to suck out the energy of the press, right? Because every press is there. So they're so focused on the Democrats. And that's when the Democrats get to show off, spread our messages, and get a bump, the convention bump, as they call it, right? To get that bump of 5%, 4%, 10% on the convention. And that's what we're hoping to do. And I think part of the reason they do it so late this year is hoping that let the Republicans have it first, and then we have ours, and then we'll have a bump going to November to get the momentum going. So I think that might be the strategy of it. I was really, really hoping the sentencing of Trump would happen in July, but unfortunately, that's no longer after the Supreme Court decision. That's been postponed till September. So that'll happen actually after both conventions. So who knows what that meant. I hope that answered your questions.
Yeah, that's really useful. Helen.
Well, Otto, thank you. This is from a fellow immigrant too. I immigrated to the United States from England. And my
Yes, I'm a
question,
former British subject too, technically.
Yes, yes.
There you go.
I'm not sure that we had your back all the time, but there's so many apologies to be made that I can't start now.
Oh,
My question was about the mail-in ballot for the delegates. Because I have a friend who is a DNC delegate from Colorado, and I hadn't heard that about the prior mail-in ballots. Then I heard it on a podcast that came out as part of this is what's going to happen, and this is why replacing Biden is just not a realistic path. And so is the mail-in ballot set? Because my concern with that is then it looks as if we are going behind the back of the will of voters by pre-rigging a convention that isn't pre-rigged. Although it makes me feel much better knowing that Biden is the official nominee going into it, and I understand about Ohio. So is there a date? And then I will also say to Suzette, if you send me your info, I listened to an hour-long podcast today from Christopher Bouzy about why Biden wins in a landslide and anybody else doesn't. And it has so much to do with human behavior. And just like Otto was saying, we've had 4 years of stability. Nobody likes chaos. if Biden leaves, people have a relationship with Joe Biden. People who are disinterested but have seen he's been the president, they have benefited from his presidency. And if you replace him with somebody, we all may know Gavin Newsom, the majority of the country doesn't. And Otto, I bet you're a great friend. But anyway, and so it was really
I have
good.
my own Gavin Newsom story, but I won't share it with you today. I just
Oh,
want to say that he had some youthful indiscretion by marrying the wrong lady the first time around.
yes.
You know who she is now? Anybody knows?
Yes, she's married to a Trump.
No, it's not yet. She's the fiance of Don Jr.
Fiance. Yeah. Suzette,
You
I'll
can
send
make
it
that
to you.
stuff up, right?
Really good. But anyway, could you talk to me about how that's going to work about and what that means in practicality? The vote, the mail-in vote.
Yes. No. So I believe July is the time frame. Late July, June or July is when they will have that vote by the delegates of who is going to be the nominee. And again, only the delegates at this point, not the popular votes, right? It's the delegates that actually are the ones that would be voting who the nominee is for the party. So as soon as that's done, the process is done. The ballots are not printed prior to that, but that's when the ballots could be printed. And I think that's actually in some ways Ohio's point is that, hey, if you make it that late, it will take us more time to get our ballots together, blah, blah, blah. So therefore, we have such an early date to make it, at least that's what the excuse is. So I don't think it would really matter or make a difference because as much as Biden kind of go on the offensive, say, hey, you want to nominate somebody in the convention? Go ahead, do it at the convention, right? He just screamed that, I guess, or talk about that a couple of days ago. But like I said, there really is no mechanism to make it happen because if you're a delegate, like for those who run to become a delegate to go to the convention, they all run, but they are all what we call pledged delegates. They have nobody else they could vote for but for Biden. And they have already signed their life away in that sense when they ran for that delegates, right? Yeah. So I'm not too worried about the predetermination part really on that issue because as much as there's a lot of debates, like, I mean, I think what 5 Congress member or 7th Congress member from the Democratic Party talks about replacing top ballot. I don't know. Sometimes people say these things to get some, likes or get some attention, or maybe that could help them on their reelection. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I think people who understands how the mechanism, how it all works, this is what we've got. And I think the one of the things I think is really interesting is very, very few times a United States president that is an incumbent actually lose the election. That's very few. George Bush Sr. is one, Jimmy Carter is another one, and Trump, right, is the other one. But since I mean near history, but if you look back in history, very, very few presidents who run for re-election because the power of the presidency or the power of incumbency is really something that is unparalleled. Everywhere he goes, they've got the Secret Service around them. They've got the Air Force One to fly them everywhere. I mean, that I think that image of whether it's stability of the power that this person has, I think it's something that it should not be overlooked. So for so many reasons, I think Joe, he's a bit older, but I think the message I think we need to tell people is this guy is like I used the Rocky analogy, right? You could beat him up so many times, right? When he first got elected senator, he was only 29 years old. Suffered a tragedy with his wife driving and killing herself and a daughter. And the hunter and Bo were both, seriously injured in ICU for weeks, right? And he was thinking about not even being as US president, right? And because I mean the senator at the time, but he journeyed on. So there's been a lot of tragedy. I mean, Bo Biden, I actually get to serve with him, honored to say that, in Iraq for a few months. I had lunch with him over in Iraq. What a great guy, right? I mean, what a sad story when your kid deceased before you. And Bo, that's another family tragedy. So he's got so many family tragedy that you see that Joe has. And you know what? He always bounced right back. He always bounce right back. And I think this is the resilience. And that's Joe Biden I want people to remember. And I think we could all relate to that.
That's a great image. Suzette has another question, and I think we would have time for maybe one more after that if anybody wants to raise your hand. Otherwise, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I wanted to go back then to the convention, and we were talking
Yes.
about the importance of the convention. Isn't another thing that happens at the convention is, in fact, the final decision on the party platform?
Yes,
Yes, and that work is considerable at the convention.
absolutely. No, it's funny that you asked. Thank you for mentioning that, because the reason why we really do these conventions is actually, besides the nominee, right, Lisa, is to pass the party platform. And that's for both the Republican and Democratic Party. So the Republican Party most recently actually did that, is they have a kind of abbreviated, kind of a softened image of the party on abortion on the platform, and try to keep it as low key as possible to not turn the Republican convention into a big fight. They try to, move very close to supporting Trump and all that, in order to make sure that there's no big fight about these issues at the convention, right? Now, for us, that platform issue potentially could be quite, let's say, spicy, depending on what's on there. Gaza, Israel issues, Palestinians, it's going to be on there, right? Of many, many issues. I mean, of course, we always have our climate change issue. We have our different other issues that we're supporting all the different groups. But the issue of how the religious the separation of church and state is completely under attack, as we know in Oklahoma and Louisiana. So a lot of these issues will be brought up in our in our platform.
Great, thank you. Lucia?
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Otto, for coming here and sharing your wisdom with us. And I'm going to throw a hot potato here. And the hot potato is about number one, the insurrection clause regarding the immunity of the president. And I understand that under Article 1.8.5, which is the congressional power to abolish the federal courts. Would that be a possibility if, the protection of an individual calls for the revision of the laws regarding the felonies that Donald Trump has enacted during his professional career?
I think it's something, like it's like the 25th Amendment, right? There's always that clause that says that the cabinet and so could remove the president of the United States. The reality, of course, at the end of the day, it really boils down to politics. It's about, like impeachment, right? It's not whether the bad thing that happened was being guilty. Very few, there are very few Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney out there on the party that would vote the other side just because of politics, not truly believe in what is necessary, what's right. And those two are no longer in Congress, as you could see, right? So I would say at the end of the day, as well as thought out, that as well written or not well written or ambiguous our Constitution is, having it be executed in many ways is unfortunately different. With the U.S. Supreme Court coming out with this absolute immunity, I hate to say it, BS. That's not that's not anywhere in anything. I believe our Constitution said the opposite. We don't want absolute immunity on any president, because this is how you're above the law, and this is how what a king does, right? We don't want royalties. We don't want kings in this country. I think our Supreme Court has really, truly messed up. Not just because of Alito hanging some flags in his properties. That's the issue, right? This is a far more dangerous precedent that would be there. And I don't want that for any president. I mean, I don't think it's good for Biden or any Democratic or Republican president to have that much of a get out of the jail card to do whatever they want, what they call it, so-called quote unquote is official duties, right? So, for example, the Congress has War Powers Act. Only Congress can declare war. If the president of the United States suddenly decided that, I really hate Iran and I'm going to nuke them, right? That's an official act. right? But Congress never passed it and said you could do it. Is that okay? That he's not criminally liable to do it? It's scary, right? I mean, what could that you could translate that for China or any other country. I would be fearful for any country in the world for that type of Supreme Court decisions, if Trump is in office.
Oof.
Thank you.
Mhm.
It is a hot potato.
Yeah, sure is. Do you have time?
Radioactive too.
Do you have time for one more question, Otto?
Sure, please, go ahead.
Okay,
Happy to.
Bronwyn, over to you.
Hey, thank you so much for the discussion. I work with students, young students, high school students, and many of them I'm still in contact with. They're all over the world at this point. I'm really interested what kind of response you might give them when the subject of Gaza and Joe Biden's unquestioning support of Netanyahu has been up until now. Now, I realize that there is contradictory information and acts that he has done and things that he has called. I'm not talking about my level of understanding. I'm talking about the youth vote and that anger. And I think that anger is a tremendous tool if we have the right answer. And if we don't have the right answer, that's going to be a suppressed demographic that we simply can't afford.
Absolutely. No, I think it's so important. And I hate to bring up the obvious, which in this case is Trump is the one who moved the US Embassy to Jerusalem. That's not law. A lot of that illegal settlement was not able to be built but for Trump's support. And had Trump been the president this day when this October 7th happened, I mean, right now they're counting around maybe close to 40,000 deaths, right? In Palestine. I would say that number is 5 to 10 times more had it been Trump. I think that's the actual reality. The one who called Muslim ban, it would be worse. He already Project 2025 already talk about concentration camps, right? This is not something I made up. This is something, go read it yourself, right? This type of stuff's going to happen. So if you think it won't be a different or won't make a big difference, wake up, people. Netanyahu will be doing a lot worse things because after all, he has, if anything Joe Biden has done is there's a few shipment of weapons, even though it's been passed by Congress, has been held back, has not been shipped to Israel because of Biden's intervention. So as much as there's so much of support, quote unquote, support of Israel that Biden has done on one side, he actually has put a lot of restraint on Netanyahu that had Trump been in there, there'll be no strings attached. That's the scary part. And I don't know how convincing it is for our younger folks, but this is the message I am providing. And I did tell people, we have to make sure that we don't conflate, right? Anti-Semitism is absolutely not acceptable. But when we criticize Israel, that in itself is not anti-Semitism. And that's the problem a lot of time we see, like the term when they say, what's defending Israel? Defending Israel from, 300 missiles being launched by Iran, that's defending Israel, right? But when you not ship water and not ship medicine to people, when you are actually out there building illegal settlements, these are not defending Israel. Some of these are, I argue, these are war crimes. So I think we just need to make sure that we will hold Netanyahu accountable. Democrats will. I'm not sure what Republicans will do. Especially Trump, definitely he won't. And I think in the long run, I think I'm really hoping that the Biden peace plan that he has laid out for this peace deal, hopefully in the next few weeks, actually could bear fruition. That would be huge. So let's hope for it to make that happen and then get that ceasefire and get the hostages released. And I hate to say I am running a little bit late from time for another meeting, but I just want to say thank you. This has been a great talk with all of you, and thank you for being a great Democrat. And please make sure to get your neighbors, any friend families that lives in swing states, especially, to make sure that they absolutely need to vote.
Thank you so much, Otto, for your time and all of your great insights and information. It's been really a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you again.
Thanks
All
so
right.
much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Okay, maybe I'll see you in Spain. Bye-bye. Thank you. Adios.
Adios. So to the rest of you, I just want to remind you, if you haven't yet, to request your ballot at votefromabroad.org. If you need any help with that, send me a message. I will help you one-to-one. And for, one thing I would say, Bronwyn, to the young voters, and I've been saying this to a lot of people, is people who are saying that they don't want to vote, tell them to fill out their FPCA now and keep their options open. Because if they decide in October, oh my gosh, yeah, I do want to vote, it might be too late. But if they do it now, they're not committing to anything. It's not an engagement ring. It's just keeping your options open, And so I think that that's a convincing argument to young people who don't want to see that they've boxed themselves into a corner, painted themselves into a corner. I don't know. Seems to work. I'm going to turn off the recording. And if anybody wants to